What is up? My name is Emmett Douglas, and this is Blindside Sports. It has been a little bit since we've had this guy on, but another returning guest in Rob G of the Odd Couple. You can get him on Twitter at the producer RG, and his full name, it's not Rob G, it's Robert Guerra, but I don't think anybody knows you by that anymore. I mean, everyone on the network calls you Rob G or producer Rob or Wrong Button Bob or multiple sauces, whatever you want to know him as. It's Rob Guerra. Welcome to the show, Rob. How you doing?
What's up, man? Good to be back.
I'm doing good, man. Glad to have you on. You did really good hosting with Chris Broussard a couple Fridays ago. So
thank you.
I think
try not to screw up too bad.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's great. But why don't we dive into the NBA Finals here? It's been a really good series. We have Game 4 from Miami coming up later tonight as the Heat are trailing the Nuggets in the series 2-1, Rob. And it's been a very interesting series considering in Game 3, Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic both had triple doubles. I mean, it was a 30, 20, and 10 game for Jokic, which we've never seen before in the playoffs. And I don't remember Murray's exact stat line, but it was a triple double. Rob, what are your thoughts on the series so far?
I think this series is already over and we're not even at Game 4 yet. You said it's later on tonight. I'm actually prepping for today's Odd Couple. So I do have Jamal Murray's stat line in front of me, 34 points, 10 assists, 10 rebounds in Game 3.
Thank you.
Obviously, those guys, no problem. It's my job, right? No, those guys were great in Game 3. And the reason why I don't think that this series is, I mean, if you want to say each game is competitive, that's fine. But as far as a series-long outlook, I don't think it's going to be close at all, is because the one game that Miami won, they shot basically 50% from three. If it's not for like a Jimmy Butler step back three in the last 30 seconds, they're over 50%. So I think they finished like 49.3 or something like that.
Yeah, some weird.
Yeah.
Weird stuff.
And Denver, that was the one game Miami won. And then Denver, they haven't shot once what their average is from three. They haven't even been what they normally shoot. They've been below that every game. So we haven't even seen a decent Denver Nuggets game. So assuming, Michael Porter Jr. or KCP or Bruce Brown or one of them goes back to what they normally do, then this series isn't even close. Like, they have no answer for Jokic. Murray, when he can get away from Jimmy Butler, can torch basically anybody who's in front of him. And
even Christian Brown coming in off the bench too. Yeah. I mean, he's been solid.
Yeah, absolutely. And credit to him, and they mentioned this during the broadcast, is he wasn't just settling for 3-pointers, which is why he got benched in the Lakers series, because he couldn't hit an outside shot. Against Miami, he's like, hey, they're going to run this zone. I'm just going to run to the basket. And Jokic and Murray are such great passers, they're going to find me. And once you see 2 or 3 of them go in, you start getting a little more confident. And then he punctuated it with that steal and slam there late in the second half.
Yeah, and to add to your point about the Heat and their 3-point shooting, that one game that Miami won on Sunday in Denver was a very interesting stat actually put out by you, where the Heat were one of the worst shooting 3-point teams in the regular season. But when the Heat are winning games in the playoffs, it's because of their 3-point shooting. You got guys like Gabe Vincent who are just draining threes. I think before Game 3, you're shooting like 50% from three or something like that. Like, Gabe Vincent's been on a roll. But I think a lot of this too in Miami and why they're not doing as good as we think. And if you were just looking at like the game and, not watching or like looking at the stats for say, the game, like it would be a lot worse than you'd think. Oh, 2 guys with a triple double. But if we're going over to Game 3 on Wednesday, the first half was actually exciting and close. And then the second half is where Denver just took off and ran with it. And it really wasn't close since that point. I mean, it was a 5-point game going into the intermission on Wednesday. And then obviously the Nuggets won that one by 15 thanks to the triple-double. And it comes down to the point for me with Miami is these guys, a lot of these young guys, Gabe Vincent, Caleb Martin, that one guy who kept missing wide open threes. I'm blanking on his name. But these guys don't have – Strus. Mm-hmm. They just don't have the experience. And, yes, they're good players. I'm not knocking them. But I think they're kind of cracking under the pressure. I think this is a big spotlight for them. And, Caleb Martin's Game 1, he had like 0 points, and I believe Strus had 0 points as well. It's just not what Miami's needed at this point. And because those were guys who were very crucial in their playoff run. I mean, Jimmy's playoff Jimmy, which we'll get to that in a second too. But these these role players that are probably more than role players to Miami just aren't doing completely what they need to be doing.
Yeah, well, you know what? Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, Caleb Martin, those guys, like they're fine. I think they're actually even above average NBA player. I think they're all very
Yes, I
solid.
agree.
They defend well, they can all shoot it. But the one thing I disagree with you about is you're saying that they're not performing the way that they need to, when based on what I've seen, I know that, the raw numbers in game one, especially, I think it was for where Strus was like 0 for 10 and Duncan
Yeah,
Robinson was 1 for something like that. But they're basically doing what they've done throughout the regular season. You know what I mean? Like the reason why Miami got to where they are right now is because they've had an unbelievably hot stretch of playoff shooting. During this playoffs, I think before or heading into game 3, I haven't checked the updated stats since then. They were shooting over 39% from 3 in these playoffs. And those guys, the reason why that number is so high is you're going to have nights where, like you said, in game 2, they shoot 50%. And then that averages out in game 1 and 3 where they shoot in the low 30s. Like it's going to average out in a game to game situation. So the only way that Miami has shown that they're able to win these games in this playoffs, and especially against Denver, is they just got to shoot the lights out. And if they
that's what we were
shoot,
saying earlier.
if they just shoot their average or below what their average is, and I think their average in the season was like 34%, they're going to lose. And that's just, it's the same thing with Phoenix. When Kevin Durant and Devin Booker were going off against Denver, they were able to win 2 games. But as soon as they don't score 70 points combined, which is a lot, 35 points per player is a huge scoring mark, they're going to lose. And they got blown out in game 6 because those guys just ran out of gas. They couldn't carry the scoring burden like that every single game. And it's unfair to ask guys to carry it like that.
Yeah, exactly. And what are your thoughts on Jimmy Butler this finals?
You know what? I think Jimmy Butler does a good job. Well, this is not anything he does. For whatever reason, and you might have heard the Odd Couple mention this last week, Jimmy Butler gets a ton of praise when he plays well, and rightfully so, because, playoff Jimmy is real. Like, his numbers go up. There's no denying that. You can just look at the raw data. But when he doesn't play well, he doesn't get the same criticism that a LeBron James, Steph Curry, Giannis, I mean, I don't think Jokic just had a bad game, but like those guys don't get the benefit of the doubt if they play poorly. And Jimmy Butler has been very uneven the last 6 or 7 games or so, and especially in these finals. I don't think he shot over 45% in any of these games, any of 3 games. And people don't talk about it. And it's just like, that's to me the difference between these all NBA top 10 guys, like, Anthony Davis. When Anthony Davis had an 18 and 15 game with 3 blocks, we were killing him because like that's you should be doing more than that. Jimmy Butler goes like 4 for 15 and nobody says a word because you don't really expect it from him on a night to night basis, like at the same level as these other guys.
And that's a completely fair point too. And I remember going into the series, Rob, where people were saying if Jimmy Butler wins this, he could be one of the best. Like he's got to climb the board of top players of all time because of this run. And now that they had all these high expectations for him, I think people don't want to walk back that point of, oh, maybe we were wrong and maybe we are jumping the gun a little bit too soon on Jimmy Butler. And, like, okay, if the Heat did win the series against this Nuggets team, which you can argue is under talked about, that's a whole nother debate. But you can argue the Nuggets are an under talked about franchise in the NBA right now. I mean, people were sleeping on them. There's so many Jokic haters, a lot of Jokic haters. And
people were calling me a Jokic hater for a
Yeah.
while because I said I had Giannis number one over him. No, I had him second. Like, I don't know if that's like disrespectful to say I think you're the second best player in the world. And it wasn't until maybe the last week or so where I kind of changed my tune. But
for me,
yeah,
with Jokic,
I was called a hater for a while. Yeah.
For me with Jokic, and this is going back to a couple months ago, and I love Jokic. I think he's a great player. But in terms of winning the MVP, for me, it was that like if we look at the players who's won like back to back to back MVPs, like is that really Jokic's level? Like I kind of question that. But now after, and for my main argument, with Jokic was I think he need to win more in the playoffs, and look at him right now. So I mean, there's a lot of opinions are going to change on Jokic, I think, if the Nuggets actually win the series. But yeah, I think and then obviously people are blaming Kendrick Perkins for Jokic losing his MVP award this year for not getting it, but I really don't know if it was all. I don't think it was Kendrick really.
No, yeah, I don't think that's fair to Kendrick Perkins or anybody. If it's, Rob Parker, Chris Broussard, Colin Cowherd, whoever, Stephen A. Smith. I don't think any one person in the media can sway a vote like that with that kind of rhetoric. I think Jokic was obviously deserving of winning MVP, but so was Joel Embiid, who ended up winning it, and
Yes.
so was Giannis. Like, if
Yes.
you just look at their numbers and their resumes blindly, you could say, okay, I kind of like this guy a little bit more. I kind of like this guy a little bit more, but you wouldn't say any one of them would be like blasphemous if they won. It just so
Exactly.
happened that Joel Embiid, the way that the Sixers had their finishing kick down the home stretch to elevate themselves in the playoff race, and he had like several big moments that stood out in voters' minds. It's kind of similar to when Aaron Rodgers won the MVP 2 years ago over Tom Brady. Tom Brady's counting stats were better than Aaron Rodgers, but Aaron Rodgers had a better record, as a team. And he had a few key moments that everybody stuck out. They're like, oh, well, remember what Aaron Rodgers did on that Thursday night with no Devontae Adams, and he was down to like his fourth string receiver, and he beat an undefeated Arizona Cardinal team. Like, that kind of stuff sticks out. When you're splitting hairs, and like going back to the Jokic MVP, when you're splitting hairs with Jokic and Giannis and Embiid, and their numbers are all kind of similar, the PER, the plus minus, all those advanced stats people like, voters are going to side with the story. And you brought up the
Yes.
thing. I don't think people wanted to give Jokic 3 straight MVPs because that would be, rarefied air. Like, LeBron's never done that. Jordan's never done that, I don't think.
It was like Larry Bird or
I
something
think
who's
Larry
done it.
Bird might be the only one, I think.
Yeah.
I'll have to look it up maybe after we're done. But they didn't want to give him that credit. And Embiid had these, flashpoint moments, hitting a game-winning shot when they played Jokic head-to-head. He gave him the work, that kind of stuff. When you're splitting hairs like that, I think that's why they ended up going with Embiid. But if Jokic would have won or if Giannis would have won, I don't think people would have been outraged. It's just,
No.
this is who they chose.
And I mean, it's safe to say that if the Nuggets win the series, and it's looking like they will with what's been going on so far, that Jokic is a clear runner for Finals MVP. I mean, what he's been doing these playoffs and this series alone is incredible. Emmett Douglas alongside Mr. Multiple Sauces, Rob Guerra of the Odd Couple, and Straight Fire on the volume. Get him on Twitter at the producer RG. Get me on Twitter at EmmettNosi04. You can follow the show at Blindside Sports 00 on Instagram. And that's where I'll be posting a bunch of good clips from, the next shows. And, if you're listening right now, we have Shay from the editing department and producing department at Fox Sports Radio coming up, in around an hour. So he'll be on the show. We're going to have a fun chat, talk his time at FSR and his career. And he's one of the only Cleveland Browns fans I know. So we're going to have to get some hot Browns talk in there. I've seen some things that Deshaun Watson is looking like the old Deshaun Watson, but we'll save that for next episode. Rob, you were a part of this yesterday on the Odd Couple with Chris and Rob. This John Morant situation has gotten really weird the past couple days, and Jaws and his team are claiming. If you guys don't know, John Morant, and you probably have to be living under a rock if you're watching this podcast and don't know what's going on with John Morant, but he basically was he's gotten caught twice now on Instagram Live flashing a gun. One time was in his friend's car, or like with his friend in a car, and then the other time was like at the club. And obviously, that's a big no-no, and it's not the look that the NBA wants. Well, Jaws Camp and his team came out on Tuesday, and they're claiming that it's a toy. And, do we believe it's a toy? And what should the punishment be are two different conversations. Rob, the first part here, do you believe him? Do you think it was a toy?
No, I don't think it was a toy.
Exactly. Well, if I need to get drops in this, but ding, ding, ding. It's not a toy.
Yeah.
That was definitely real. And if you saw the video too, like from what I think it might have been VJ Husky, somebody on FSR was saying too, where it was like the boy, like his friend was like, he had the reaction like of, oh, like the guy seems get kind of thrown off guard when Ja flashed that gun, on the second video. So yeah, I don't think it was a toy. All right. And this is a two-part question. So the next question here is what should the punishment be like normally, right? Like for this action. And if it is a toy, and this is what Chris and Rob got very spicy with yesterday, should the punishment be reduced or should he have any punishment at all for having a toy?
I think his punishment first will be anywhere between 25 and 40 games. I think that's what they're aiming for. I think it's got to be significant to send a message, especially as a, quote unquote repeat offender. But it can't be like a whole season because he didn't break any laws. And I don't think the Players Association would allow Adam Silver to bring that heavy of a hammer if he wanted to. So I think anywhere between 25 to 40. I lean closer to 25, like the more that this gets discussed. I just think that's what it's going to be. As far as if it was a toy gun and whether or not that should impact his punishment, absolutely not. Because to your point and what Rob and Chris were debating yesterday, him owning a gun is not a problem, right? There's plenty of NBA players who own guns. Him even having a gun in his car is not a problem, provided that it's registered and it's secured the way it should be. It's legal. It's totally fine. The issue, and you alluded to this, is image. And the NBA has gone a long time trying to craft a certain image of its league and of its players. And with any company that you work for or you're, in business with, or you have a partnership with, they have morality clauses and things of that nature that will tell you these are what we expect from you. Like there's nothing illegal about calling someone a slur. Like you're not going to get arrested for it. You're not going to get fined for it. But if you do that in the workplace, you might get fired because that's workplace, mixed conduct. And Ja Morant, whether that gun is real or not, what the NBA has is an image thing, and they don't want their players to be flashing weapons and doing it into a way where it's, glorifying it. Like that's not what they're about. And so if it's fake, then he's stupid. Like, I mean, if it's real, he's stupid. But the fact is that
it's like if it's fake, he looks even more of a clown.
Yeah, he does look even.
I was telling Justin Cooper that the other night. I was like, because he was talking about it too. I'm like, if it's like a fake gun, it like come on, like especially knowing what happened the first time you did it, it makes it look like he didn't learn his lesson at all, and everything he did was a waste of time. I mean, just a horrible look for Ja.
And if it was a fake gun, then he looks even more like a wankster than people thought he was. Like, like there's all these videos on social media where it's, they have pictures of Ja Morant when he was in middle school and he went to a private school. He has pictures of both of his parents, and it's it's the whole 8 Mile comparison. It's like if you were flashing a fake gun, then that makes this whole thing look even worse because you are a fake gangster the way people assume that you are already.
Yep. And and people were also saying too, it's like don't comment on his person. Let him do him, but like you can't assume what he is, and that was kind of people's points. And for me, in terms of the punishment, I mean, you're right. Like I would like to see the hammer just get thrown on him because he looks so stupid doing what he's doing, and especially doing it in a situation like the first video. I think that's also pretty dumb. Like in a club, but come on, especially during the NBA season, really. But and it comes down to the Players Association, and also I think the NBA's money is kind of a factor in this suspension too, because if Ja Morant is a very polarizing player in the NBA, I mean. People, with LeBron, getting older and all this, the face of the league, it could be anybody. I mean, I think Jokic could, with all this, could have a chance of doing it. But Ja is a superstar point guard. He's one of the better point guards in the NBA. And it would, people like to watch John Morant play basketball. He's a clean player. He's clean to watch. And the NBA knows that. And with the NBA, having all these ratings issues, and we're not going to get into this today because that could be a whole nother thing with like
Right.
I don't know if you saw the attendance stuff where it's like apparently an all-time high. I mean, it could be COVID, but like post-COVID, people want to get out. But I think, that's a whole nother conversation, a whole nother show, like off-season time. But, it's just the NBA, they need their money. He's a very good player, and he's one of the superstars of the NBA. And I think that's going to, come down to the punishment. And obviously Adam Silver, a couple weeks ago or a week ago with that kind of cliffhanger, like, oh, let's just wait till the finals are done.
Yeah, that was stupid.
A lot of people
he shouldn't have done that.
A lot of people are like, oh, there's going to be a whole season. And as much as I'd like to see that happen, it's not going to happen because the NBA, they're a money's league. I think you said 25 to 40 games. I think that's right about what it is. The rumor from Legion Hoops on Twitter was that it's going to be 30 games.
Yeah,
a 30-game
right in
suspension.
That window. Right.
Yep, right in the middle, or almost in the middle. But it's looking like that way for Ja, and I think something needs to be done. I hope he learns his lesson, because if one or two more dumb situations, especially, it doesn't have to be a gun, just anything like stupid that he does, especially like with all this, drama he's had the past couple months, it's not going to look good for Ja. It's not good at all. So I think hopefully this suspension could kind of teach him a lesson and get him back on his feet, because he's a cool player to watch. I enjoy, John Morant as an NBA player, and I think the Grizzlies have, some potential to be had with him. So the NBA knows that it's going to be anywhere from 25 to 40 games. I agree with Rob.
All right, I'm glad that we're in lockstep on something. It makes you feel like I'm doing something right if you agree with me. So.
Well, me and you, we mostly agree. Like we kind of interact a fair amount on Twitter.
Yeah.
Well, I'll reply to your tweets or whatever. Talking, when you screen me for the Odd Couple, we mostly agree. I mean, sometimes on Lakers stuff or Tom Brady stuff.
I hate Tom Brady.
I do too. I'm a you know who I hate the most. I'm a big Nick Wright, former board op, who does this show with me a fair amount. Me and him are both huge Aaron Rodgers haters. I can't stand Aaron
Rodgers. Okay.
That's my Tom Brady. I think. I mean, I don't know if you've been in when when I've called on an Aaron Rodgers topic on the Odd Couple, or on any Fox Sports radio shows, but I slam him. I don't like him.
Well, look,
you know what? In the playoffs,
there's some people who will say like, hey, if you're in broadcasting, you got to be objective and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I totally disagree with that, because I think the only reason why any of us got into the sports media business, whether it's as a reporter or as a podcast host, like what you're doing, a TV host, you get into it because you're a fan first. Like you love sports, you love certain players, you love certain teams growing up. And maybe as you get older, you have a certain level of like professionalism where you can separate your fandom from your work status. But I think it's important to keep that fandom in you at some level. And it's totally acceptable. If you just decide I don't like Aaron Rodgers, and that's fine.
Oh, I have reasons. I can argue
like that. Like the thing, as long as you have, and if you ever have to go on air, like on this show or another show, and you have to explain why, or you're, as long as you have something to back it up, then more power to you. It might be fighting an uphill battle like I am with Tom Brady, because it's really hard to argue against 7 Super Bowls. But I will keep trying.
More of Brady haters, though.
Yeah, but like you know what you're getting into, and as long as you're willing to apologies to John Morant, but have something in the chamber and go for it.
Hit the laugh track, tie shirt. That was a good one. That was very accidental. That very clever of you. Very clever.
Yeah, I didn't. It stumbled on that one.
Yeah, great job by you. You got anything else on that, or you want to move on to the next topic?
No, we can move on. Go ahead.
All right. This is Blindside Sports. He is Rob G. I am Emmett Douglas. Get me on Twitter at EmmettNoC04. You could follow Rob at the producer RG. If you want to hear more of Rob's takes, you can also look up Straight Fire wherever you get your podcasts, and also available on YouTube now, because my boy Jason McIntyre signed with the Volume. You're officially a part of Cowherd now. You're a Volume guy. You're a producer on the Volume because you produce for J-Mac. So congratulations.
Yeah, I mean, I got a hat out of it, which is nice. So that's cool. It's a little trucker hat. I've worn it a few times, and Other than
The
that, it's
next
pretty
step is
much
for
business as
them to
usual.
call
Yeah.
you in to produce Cowherd. That's the next step.
I've only ever produced the herd one time, and Colin wasn't there. It was years ago, and it was Broussard and J Mac together.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I mean, Alex Teichert and Iowa Sam, they get all the herd reps on the board.
They
That
do. They
Teichert,
do.
Chris Broussard gives him a bunch of crap for that because he's never there because he's always on the herd. So
Yeah,
we
it's
got guys
Colin
like
trying to
Mark and
steal our
Iowa
best
Sam.
people, man. He's trying to steal
Yeah.
our best people.
Oh yeah, very quickly. Speaking of the fill-ins for Teichert, you know how like all the guys had like USC Chris, Iowa Sam, the heavy back in the day, like they have
Right.
nicknames. Our guy
Yes.
Mark, Ethan Miller calls him Mighty Mark. I think that has to be his show nickname from now on.
Okay. I'll definitely make a suggestion note, for Chris and Rob next time
There
he's
you
on.
go. They love the nicknames. I mean,
They
Rob
do.
G, B Fen,
Yeah, and what's
Diet
funny
Coke
is
yesterday.
yeah, that was funny. Is before I started working on the Odd Couple, literally nobody called me Rob.
Yeah,
Zero. Nobody. And
you
the,
were
the only
Robert.
reason why it stuck was because my email, which you used to send me the link to this show here, the way it works on our company, it's your first name and your first name and the first letter of your last name, and
Yep.
then at the domain. So it would have been Robert G at blah 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 blah, and there was already someone Robert G in the database, so they just shortened it to Rob. So anytime I send an email to Chris and Rob, about the show or about guests or whatever, it will come up from Rob G. So they just assume that that's what I prefer to call myself, and it's stuck. And now it's like a brand name, like Blindside Sports. Like it's a brand.
Yep, and I mean, when you were in for Rob Parker a couple of weeks ago, they were people. You had if you, I mean, you were tweeting about the YouTube comments. I went and took a look. A lot of people were. I mean, you got a lot of fans, more fans than like you'd expect for a producer. People were loving your takes.
Only on the Odd Couple. The comments on the Straight Fire, because it's a new audience with the volume and everything like that. Definitely not as kind so far.
Who is this
But
bum? Is that what they're saying?
yeah,
Stuff
that
like
kind of stuff.
that?
But
Yeah. Oh
I'll
yeah.
wear on them over time.
Twitter and YouTube are ruthless, man. They like those comment sections. They do not care. But we'll bring a couple more topics for you guys here. The Suns, it looks like they are going to say goodbye to Chris Paul, and they're waiving him. And there's a bunch of rumored teams such as the Lakers and the Clippers or even the Celtics. Where do you think Chris Paul is going to end up next year?
Oh, with the Lakers for sure.
Yep. Do you think he's taking a pay? Like, how much do you think he's signing for?
It's not going to be the veteran minimum. I think that as like a former Players Association, I think he was the president or vice president, I don't think he could in good conscience take the vet minimum salary because of what kind of message it sends to the rest of the players. Like guys like him, LeBron, Kobe back in the day, like they understood the business side of the NBA. And the minute that guys start taking less money is when teams start taking advantage of that and expect you to take less money than what your value is. So I could see him looking to get the full mid-level, which is like 12 million, but ultimately settling for like the taxpayer mid-level, which is like closer to 5 million.
And for that price, everyone's like, the Lakers, they don't need veterans, blah, blah, blah. I hear them, but for this is like one of the rare exceptions. I think Chris Paul, he'd bring a lot of leadership, and it could kind of open things up more for the Lakers. I mean, Chris Paul is a great passer, great point guard, and if you can get him for that cheap, why not?
Exactly.
I mean, he's obviously a much better fit than Russell Westbrook was with the Lakers. I mean, and we haven't even seen him play with that team, and you can already see that.
Even if it was Russell Westbrook, right? Let's say it was Russ and not Chris Paul in the situation. Russell Westbrook, at 47 million, hell no. But Russell Westbrook at 5 million, oh, absolutely, sure, you'll figure it out. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't cost you much to get rid of him. Like you're not hamstrung by his salary. If it's only $5 million, you'll take a risk on damn near anybody for $5 million in the NBA.
That's my point. Exactly. Yep. And even like a 1-year deal, like with a little bit more money, like it's 1 year. I'll still take a risk,
Sure. Absolutely. And I think eventually he's going to be becoming a Laker. The only thing is what happens to like D'Angelo Russell or the rest of the roster. That's the only question. But I think
But I think, would you rather have Chris Paul or D'Angelo Russell though?
I'd rather have them both, to be honest with you, because I don't think Chris Paul is an 80 game player, at
No,
this point in his career. I think
probably like
at his
60.
best, yeah, he's like 60 and he's playing like 25 minutes a night because you want to keep him as fresh as possible for the
For the
playoffs. And
playoff.
even in the playoffs, you wouldn't play him 40 minutes, you play him like 30.
Yeah.
But if the Lakers had a Chris Paul level player for 25 to 30 minutes a night in the playoffs, then maybe they're in the finals. I don't know, but it's a lot better than what D'Angelo Russell was giving them. You know what I mean? So if you can platoon him and another guy, whether
What
it's
about
Schroeder,
AR-15?
well, yeah, but I think he's already locked into that spot anyways. Like I don't
Yeah,
think
he's a
he's going
restricted
anywhere.
free agent. So if the Lakers do, if any other team does offer him, I think the Lakers are going to match it, unless
Oh
it's
yeah,
like a complete overkill pay. But like, who's really going to? I don't know. Like, I think the Lakers are going to do whatever they can to kind of keep him
yeah,
in
of
LA.
course. Yeah, especially because his first 2 years, because like there's just some weird rule in the salary cap, but the first 2 years would only be like 12 million each year, and it wouldn't
Yeah.
balloon until the third year. And it's like if you're that worried about that, you sign him now, you get him for the 2 years that are cheap, and if you're that worried about the price, then you can trade him later. Like
Yep.
it's always better to have guys under contract than not, because then you can always use the asset for something else.
Exactly. I told you, over messages, we're gonna talk about NBA offseason a little bit. We got like 20 minutes, 30 minutes left, so we could. I don't know how much time you got left. Like 20.
I got like 10
Oh, okay, I
because we
missed.
started a little bit late.
Yeah, but all right, so we got 10 more minutes.
Yeah.
We'll kind of do a little bit of rapid fire here. NBA offseason, the rumors are already starting to swirl here. LeBron James is getting recruited by Kyrie Irving to go to the Mavericks. How do you feel? How do you think it's happening? How do you like it? What are your thoughts?
It's not going to happen. It's a
Yep,
non-story. There's
typical
0.0%
Kyrie.
chance. Yeah.
Yep.
Now to me, it read more like Kyrie was putting that out there, or somebody in his camp was putting it out there as to say like, hey, Kyrie and LeBron really want to play together. And so not only were they exploring him going to the Lakers, they're exploring LeBron going to the Mavs. But realistically, that's just not possible. Like they don't have the assets to trade for him. LeBron's not a free agent, so it's still more likely that Kyrie comes to the Lakers, even if that's a really small percent, than it is
Would
that
you
LeBron goes to.
embrace that, or are you not a fan?
I would only be cool with it as long as LeBron is there. So
Yeah,
if you can
that's
tie up
fair.
their contracts to the same timeline, then sure. But other than that, I don't think I'd be
I got
too
it.
gung ho.
I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I think Kyrie is a great basketball player, and you can't deny that. But with all this off court attention that Kyrie kind of brings to a team, I mean, in at this point in LeBron's career, does he really want that, like a chance of like having a bunch of drama kind of overfold with Kyrie? I mean, there's at least 1 to 2 stories every season where Kyrie is a part of some sort of drama, whether it be, going to his sister's birthday party in the middle of the COVID, the anti-Semitic comments he made a couple months ago, or not playing, or his beef with Harden, the Nets kind of falling apart. Like there's always something with him, and at this point, if I'm LeBron, I kind of just want to win, man. I don't know if I want all
Yeah.
this just BS. Like,
Well, see, I think that LeBron's wanting to win outweighs the concern he would have with all the BS. So he's in his mind, he's like, look, I can put up with the weird tweets or Instagram messages. I can put up with him going AWOL for, a week. Like, cause that's what he did back in Cleveland. Like, I don't know if people know this, but
that's when it first started.
yeah,
Yes,
it's been well reported that
it's not a new thing.
Kyrie would go days without talking to any of his teammates, like just because he was upset about something. They wouldn't even know what it was. They just knew he was upset, and he would ignore them for days on end, several days. And then one day he just snap out of it and he's back to normal, and they don't even know what the issue was. So I think LeBron, especially at this age in his career, that he would be willing to put up with whatever all that extra stuff is if he thought it put him 10% closer to a championship.
I mean, that's a good point. I mean, I hear you, but like if there's Kyrie or another superstar, available, and I'm the Lakers and I'm LeBron, chances are, I'm probably gonna try and go more for that superstar. Next NBA offseason story, really quickly here, and then I got a Raiders question for you.
Okay.
Damian Lillard, there's rumors of him getting traded. All right, is it happening? Is this a year that Damian isn't loyal and leaves the my Blazers, by the way, or you think he's going to see what the third pick brings and stay a little bit longer?
I think it would be best for both Dame and the Blazers to trade him. As
But
good as Damian Lillard
do you
is,
think it's happening, or you think that's just what you
I
want to
think
happen?
that's
I think there's a
I
difference.
think that's what's going to happen. I think
Spicy.
I think that they're going to get to the draft and they're going to realize that they're not going to find a trade that they like for the third overall pick, because you don't just trade the pick, you trade the pick and the salary. So it's like, do you think that trading, I don't even know if this works, but if you're trading the number 3 pick and Anthony Simons for Jaylen Brown, like, does that put you closer to an NBA championship? Yeah, but it doesn't make you a contender. Like, you would need Jaylen Brown plus Anthony Simons, to feel good about it.
Anthony Simons is good, dude.
He
showed
is.
something.
He really is. And so that's the issue that they run into, is that there isn't like a magic trade they can make, because they just don't have the other like ancillary parts where they can just cobble together a bunch of contracts and then get a really good player to team up with Dame and Simons and Jeremy Grant, assuming he comes back.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. If you look at the free agents, Draymond's there, and I'm also a Draymond hater, but I can admit before I say this, I know he's not leaving the Warriors, and that's what I was going to get to. But I would take him on that team. I mean, for his scrappiness and defense, and his passing, I think it could work. But like I just said, the odds of him leaving the Warriors, he said it on the shout out the Volume again. He said it on the Volume podcast. That he doesn't want to leave. He wants to be a Warrior for life. So that kind of shot that down for me immediately. But
right,
yeah.
So yeah, I think they'll be better off. They'll be better off trading Dame, getting a king's ransom from, and hopefully if they do decide to trade him, that Portland does right by him and doesn't just send him to the highest bidder. Like, hopefully it's a team that he's comfortable going to, because he's been so loyal to that team and that city and that franchise, that if they are going to trade him, that they trade him somewhere where he's at least happy.
Crushed if they do trade him. I think he low key, if it was his choice, I think he'd stay as long as he possibly could. I mean,
sure, yeah, I think if it was his choice, but I think he also, and his comments suggest this, that he wants to win a title. And right now, the problem is that his timeline doesn't line up with the rest of the Blazers' timeline. Like, they have young players. That number 3 pick, I think, is going to be a really good player, whether it's Scoot Henderson or Brandon Miller. It's going to be somebody really good, and they're going to be good moving forward, but it's not going to be right away. It's going to be like 2 or 3 years down the line. And by then Dame's going to be in his mid-30s.
Which, depending on the player, he could still be at a high level. But I mean, it's kind of up to Dame too. It's like, do I want to wait 3 years?
Exactly.
Like, who knows? Like, you never know, like, as bad as it sounds, what injury could go down, or what. I mean, it's just a part of aging. I mean, like LeBron at 38, he's starting to deal with injuries. I mean, players start to wear down at different ages. So if Lillard wants to risk that, which I'm still holding hope, and that could just be me being a Blazers fan, but I mean, he might want to be here for the long run. But I also would not be mad if Lillard left at the same time. Like, yeah, I would be sad and be like, oh, you know what? Like, era's over. But looking at a business standpoint and kind of a business standpoint for the Blazers and for Lillard, I mean, it makes sense. And for me, there's a difference between it makes sense and it's going to happen, I want it to happen. I mean, I don't know if it's going to happen.
Of course, you don't want it to happen.
No.
You never want to get rid of a guy like that.
No, and you a couple of years ago, when was it 2021 when these rumors started, and you and J-Mac and were like, oh, he should get traded to the Clippers for Paul George, and I remember getting replying to that tweet a couple of times to both you and Jason McIntyre, and I was not accepting it at the time, but now seeing these past couple of years, I mean, and me being a Dame fan as well and liking what he's done, I could see why he would leave.
Right, yeah, and he's one of those guys where I think everybody respects him. So even as a Blazers fan, like you were saying, if he goes somewhere else, like, you'd be happy for him to succeed. Obviously not against your team, but against the other 28 teams, you'd be like, all right, cool. I'm glad to see Dame, in a position where he could, make a
Completely
real
different than
run.
my
Yeah.
Seahawks and Russell Wilson. Completely different.
Right. Right.
You're probably not rooting for Russell either because of the Raiders. And the question I want to ask you about the Raiders was Jimmy G he's already injured, man. He's already dealing with some foot injuries, and the season hasn't even started.
Right.
And there is a rumor, I believe it was ML Football or the NFL Rumors account on Twitter yesterday, where if Jimmy G is not ready by the start of the season, they could bring in Carson Wentz. I mean, seems kind of ridiculous to me. The Raiders, I mean, I hate to do it to you, but with this division and all that you got the Chargers who you never know what's going to happen, but Herbert's Herbert. You got the Chiefs with, who I think are the lock to win that division. And you got the Broncos who is Russell Wilson really going to be bad 2 years in a row? Is Sean Payton I think Sean Payton's going to elevate him. So, I mean, I think the Raiders are going to be unfortunately, the fourth team in that division. Yeah. I don't know if Jimmy's going to work out. I really don't. Even if he, does come back healthy.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I hated the signing when they made it. I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo.
I think I'd rather have Derek Carr.
Yeah, for sure. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is a mediocre quarterback, a below average quarterback. You had all those weapons and that great play calling and that great defense in San Francisco, and they still try to replace you with a guy who had only played college football for one season, and he played it in division or FCS, whatever, like Trey Lance. Like that tells you all you need to know about Jimmy Garoppolo.
And then, I mean, I think the Niners have some loyalty issues, though. I mean, they saw Mr. Irrelevant, Mr. Iowa State, Brock Purdy, and we're like, oh, screw Trey Lance. And it looks like then now the rumors of, could Trey Lance get traded because if Brock Purdy's ready, the Niners have so many, and that's a whole other thing, but the Niners have so many, their quarterback room is so weird. I mean, I mean, it makes sense why they signed Sam Darnold because just let's look at that playoff game. I mean, against the Eagles, that they had Joshua Johnson and Christian McCaffrey as quarterbacks. So,
right.
I mean, they're probably scared because, the Niners are a great team, but the one thing that they have that just screws them every year is injuries. The Niners are they're kind of like the Chargers where
the exact same thing. Yes. Their rosters are loaded, but they're always hurt.
Yep, exactly. And I'm glad we're in agreement on the Raiders. I'm glad that, a lot of these, LA Raider guys, LA people, Raider fans are like, oh, Jimmy G's gonna be great. A lot, we'll call them Twitter Raider fans because these Twitter guys, I mean, they have some pretty crazy takes. But
yes,
Rob, man, it's been a fun time. Really appreciate you coming on the show. I know you're a very busy guy with the wife, the kid, the Odd Couple, Straight Fire.
I got a call here in a few minutes, so that's why I gotta jump off. Otherwise, I'd hang on with you a little bit longer. But
hey,
gotta get these
Shay
shows
coming
ready.
on though. We got Shay from the. I don't even know how to say his last name. That's such
Neither do I. Don't worry about it.
I'm Shay from the editing department. That's wrong. Shay from Fox Sports Radio. All right, he'll be on next. I'm not even gonna try and pronounce his last name until he gets there. I don't want to butcher it, but. We'll probably be on in about 10 to 20 minutes. So if anyone's listening, you could just kind of wait around if you want to hear that. Stay near your phone or your computer because it's gonna be a good episode. A Cleveland Browns fan is jumping on the show.
That's right.
But yeah, Rob, it's been a fun show. If you want to tweet Rob, you can get him at the producer RG. Are you filling in anytime soon on FSR for Jason?
Possibly, in like a week and a half or so, but we'll see. That's still to be determined.
They need to put you on, you got very good takes. They need to put you on other shows, I think.
You're just saying that because you're just saying that because you agree with my takes. That's all. If you didn't agree with them, you wouldn't think they were good.
Well, okay. As a guy, really quickly, as a guy who, listens to sports radio, they're like me and Rob Parker, for example, as because you screen the calls. Me and Rob, it's pretty rare I agree with Rob, but I still love Rob. Rob's awesome. And I mean, if you're entertaining and you bring good sports talk, and I mean, I can still disagree with you and still want to hear you, I think you could. I mean, that'd be cool if you worked with Steve Hartman. That was just an idea. I
love Steve Hartman.
Steve Hartman's awesome. Great dude. Wish I could get him on here, but maybe that will happen. But if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to leave a like. Go follow Rob's socials and go check out Straight Fire with Jason McIntyre because you're kind of like a co-host on there. Go check out The Odd Couple. We'll be live from 4 to 7 Pacific, 7 to 10 Eastern on the iHeartRadio app. Just search Fox Sports Radio, or if you're not listening, then you can go check out the podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. Just type in The Odd Couple with Chris Broussard and Rob Parker. Is that a good plug?
That's perfect. Thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem. Yeah, and you can go follow Odd Couple on social media at Odd Couple FSR. I mentioned them on Instagram, so you can go over there.
Perfect.
If you enjoyed this, make sure to leave a like. Thanks for watching, and have a good day. Get me on Twitter at EmmettNosey04. Enjoy your weekend. Stay tuned for Shay. See ya.
Thanks, man.
Rob.